Hello and welcome back to Ray's Gaming and more Monster Hunter Wilds talk. Today we're talking about collaboration events. Of course, we have the upcoming Capcom Collab, the first one of May, which certainly seems like it's going to be Street Fighter, based on this tweet where we're seeing, well, a palico paw print in the style of Street Fighter. People have certainly got mixed opinions on this and we will reference it a little bit, but right now I want to talk about other collabs that we can hope for or even expect that aren't specifically Capcom related. So back in World, there were big non-Capcom collabs which were part of title updates. This would include a big addition, which was often a new monster. The two that did this were Final Fantasy XIV as that collab, and the Witcher collab events there. Some of the most involved collab events to this day actually. Back in Title Update 4 for Monster Hunter World, we had the Final Fantasy collab that added a new monster, the Behemoth. It's funny, the Behemoth was made into something seriously scary in my mind, something quite special thanks to this collab and the mechanics involved where I fought it for the first time. It was a genuinely tough enemy, cool in design, fit right into Monster Hunter, especially the extreme version. When I finally got around to playing Final Fantasy XIV years later, I was fighting the Behemoth as a more forgettable boss that was just part of a big raid, even a raid finder group at that, with simplified mechanics and challenge. So I had this incredible experience with Behemoth in Monster Hunter, but the real one in Final Fantasy XIV was so tame by comparison, so they definitely did something special. The event itself opened with a quest line to unlock the Behemoth as a hunt. Initially you were dealing with a massive Kula Yaku, which is holding a crystal of light, rather than like a rock or whatever. But this eventually leads to the real deal with the Behemoth itself. Now, rather than a normal hunt, it had some special mechanics of an MMO of Final Fantasy XIV. So players would generally need to fill assigned roles like tank, healer and DPS rather than blindly approaching things. So the Behemoth would do some interesting things like warn you of its next spell or have its own aggro system, or of course summon that devastating comet that you'd need to hide from, just like the real fight in the raid. Later you deal with the extreme version with the ramped up challenge, much like say a tempered or AT version of the fight. So you'd be juggling tanking between multiple players, DPS at the same time, maybe drop a life powder here and there, rather than defined roles the whole way. Overall, the experience and the progression of it was fantastic. And of course, it introduced its own equipment, which was pretty standout at the time. There's the Draken armor set, which made you look like a dragoon straight from Final Fantasy, and fit perfectly with the insect glaive in particular as a weapon. There was also a unique emo that had you zip up into the sky and then slam back down just like a dragoon, with incredible detail to it. You'd technically be invincible for this tiny period during that gesture, which could be actually used to dodge mechanics like the comet in the fight. On the other hand, we did get another good one in terms of major collabs, which was The Witcher, also in World. The final title update for World was Title Update 5, with the introduction of Geralt and the short storyline that was involved there. This collab event actually impacted us in Wilds though. It's the very reason we have dialogue with the NPCs and dialogue options at that, heavily influenced by the Witcher collab. As stated by the leads of Wilds, the reaction to the conversations and the options you could have with Geralt in this collab actually was what led them to make it a key feature in Wilds, which is pretty cool to think about. So, the collab with Witcher 3. A monster from Witcher appears with Geralt popping out behind it through a portal from another world. This actually works within the Witcher universe because certain characters have this special power to transport themselves from world to world. There's funny hints then that Ciri might have gone to the cyberpunk universe within The Witcher 3, while in the books, for example, a certain character does end up in the legend of King Arthur, you know, the Knights of the Round Table and Merlin. So this collab story is actually entirely believable in its own way. That story was also particularly special because the main voice actor for Geralt in the game series did the VA for this event too, so he worked both visually and sounded the part. You quite literally played as Geralt for a bit under the guise of a sword and shield user, as well as an item that basically gives you a little fire blast in the style of the Igni sign. All of it led to the big encounter though with the monster itself, the Leshen, and later the Ancient Leshen as a tougher version. But yes, just like what we saw with the Final Fantasy event, it introduced a layered set, different equipment, and a monster to fight. In the case of this layered set though, you had Geralt with his sword and shield special weapon option as well, but also, awesomely, Ciri herself too. So those were the two big collab events of World, introducing collab based monsters, characters, unique mechanics, influencing Wilds at some point. Other non-Capcom Collab events did exist, they were just way less memorable by comparison. Your average experience with these would be familiar monsters that would somewhat fit the theme of the collab. This would then introduce a few new items, equipment, layered pieces, which are still cool, but yes, less impressive by that comparison. There were multiple Horizon Zero Dawn collabs, for example, both one for World and then later Iceborne. In World, you'd face off against 2 Devil Joe to unlock the layered set for Ally to look like the character, while the event quest hunted Anjanath would result in the bow as the weapon. There was also the Watcher set for the Palico to fit in. Meanwhile, the Iceborne version was for the Frozen Wilds DLC, similar concepts. You'd hunt a Stygian Zinogre, which does fit well to be fair, resulting in the Shield Weaver armor set, and instead of a bow this time, you had this special futuristic light bowgun, which was pretty cool. And again, a different Frostclaw set for your Palico. There was also the hunt against a Savage Devil Joe, which rewarded the Bannock armor set to give you a way to dress like the Horizon kind of theme, but keep your character appearance. As another different collab example, we had the Assassin's Creed collab, in which you took on the event quest in the arena, hunting multiple monsters at once, which when completed, would unlock the Bayek layered armor set and also the Assassin's HUD. So you could choose to look like the Origins Assassin or the classic Ezio look by comparison. There's a neat selection to fit in with the released game at the time versus the more iconic look of Assassin's Creed. So cool cosmetics for a mini challenge, but there wasn't much more than that. Those then are more on the lower end level of collabs. And on that note, that's where I expect the new Street Fighter collab in Wilds to kind of fall. While we currently don't know what's going on in that, there is a lot of disappointment in response to the Twitter post about it. People complaining that there's been quite a lot of collabs around Street Fighter for Capcom lately, not specifically Monster Hunter, but just Capcom collabs with all kinds of games. The idea is to push people towards the game, which through these collabs isn't a bad thing at all. There was a big one for Overwatch revealed in the last weeks, for example, but it's far from the first Street Fighter collab recently and the first Street Fighter Monster Hunter collab either. Street Fighter 6 itself has already done a collab with Monster Hunter for its 20th anniversary with a Ratalo set and different weapons in that game. For the Monster Hunter side of things, in Rise you had the Akuma look to unlock, in World there was a set for Ryu and Sakura, and a handler costume for Chun-Li, and so on. Once again then, these collabs all involved some fun cosmetics and neat details, but nothing that engaging, unique or special beyond an event quest with a familiar monster already in the game, just so you can unlock those collab rewards. People were pretty hopeful for something a bit more involved for the first event for Wilds, so maybe it's too early to hope for a full-on new collab monster, or even a storyline. But it does feel like the first big collab of Wilds was meant to be something a bit more special than one of the smaller collabs, especially when Street Fighter's been done so many times. Personally, I was really wanting to see Dragon's Dogma something. After all, there's a bunch of good monsters they can pull from that world to this one, like the Sphinx as a big one, but incredible other creatures in DD2, like the Medusa, a Chimera, the Black Drakes, or the big bad, that giant red dragon. Other options like ogres, trolls, smaller monsters too. There's a ton to choose from while highlighting DD2 through that collab. But maybe there's still hope for that, because in this case, it's just a smaller collab, and maybe they want to save a bigger collab for something more special like that, though that could be copium. So, what could be some awesome non-Capcom collabs that are actually possible? Well, the one that seems most likely would actually be a Final Fantasy collab again, and it would work well for Wilds. We've already had hints of this in the past, that's why I think it's likely. It was Yoshida himself that talked about it briefly, stating that the World collab was a total defeat because the quality of Capcom's version of the Behemoth was so amazing. Let's collaborate with Wilds and bring out Bahamut this time. So while that doesn't confirm anything, it shows clear interest and a fond appreciation of the first collab. It even tells us what monster they'd be interested in doing for that. And you know, you could go for a Final Fantasy XIV, but you could also go for Final Fantasy XVI, which is more recent as a major release. And Bahamut has been a key figure in loads of Final Fantasy games, not just Final Fantasy XIV. The main character there, Clive Rossfield, has been seen in different games for their own collabs too, like the recent Tekken 8 collab a few months back, so there's certainly potential there. But you know, Final Fantasy XIV did have its expansion Dawn Trail not overly long ago. Within Dawn Trail, you had 2 new jobs, aka classes, that could work here. Firstly, you have the Viper, an absolutely awesome concept that uses 2 swords in fast combination strikes, looking cool as hell and would match perfectly for the dual blades in Wilds. However, a part of this class is the combination of the two blades to make one weapon, which, you know, looks like a glaive. That could then mean we'd have a dual blades version and then an insect glaive version, both fitting that theme. On the other hand, you also have the other new job in Dawntrail, the Pictomancer, which is harder to fit in Monster Hunter. We're talking about basically a magical painter that brings the creations to life through spells. But if you pushed it, you could see this match the hunting horn pretty well, with them playing songs to create colourful images. And say with the echo bubbles, that would match that theme pretty well too. A physical creation from your music, your art. For a unique monster from Dawntrail though, I'm a lot less certain about that, since they've already expressed interest in Bahamut specifically. That's what I'm expecting if they did that. For other options, other major collabs they might do, well, I don't want to say it's going to be this, but, you know, I want to mention at least Witcher. Technically, you know, they did have The Witcher 4 revealed with a cinematic not too long ago with the aged up Ciri. There's also the fact that Witcher 3 just had its 10-year anniversary. There was also that Netflix animated series recently. And on top of all of that, there was the new Witcher book that released late last year in Polish, which is currently being translated. I really can't wait for it. So, I mean, there's some merit to that, but I'm not exactly banking on it. But you never know. Otherwise, they could really do anything. One big thing that would open up a lot of cool potential though would be Elden Ring. And with its newly releasing Night Rain, there's a ton of FromSoft bosses and characters, equipment and designs that would be amazing. Night Rain is doing away with a lot of the lore concerns, throwing a lot of crazy stuff into the one game. In a trailer we saw them fighting the Nameless King, which is from Dark Souls 3, not Elden Ring. And they're doing some stuff with different skins, like we've seen Knight Artorias from Dark Souls 1, and other characters like that. A Night Rain collab would let them do anything big from any of the From Software games. This is probably quite the hope and fantasy, but it's been a popular idea that a collab between FromSoft and Monster Hunter would be awesome. There's so many great monsters and bosses you get to pick from. Cool options that would work, like Manus, Father of the Abyss, who would work somewhat like a fanged beast. Something crazy and fun like the Great Wolf Sith. If you want to go more dragony, there's Dark Eater Midir from Dark Souls 3. All kinds of dragons actually in that series. But there's so many good selections. But yeah, for now I'm going to end it there for this collab talk. There's obviously a lot of potential, but right now the most reasonable take that I have is the Final Fantasy collab of some kind with Bahamut. Whether that's Final Fantasy 14 or 16, it doesn't matter to me, they both could work. And with Final Fantasy having so many cool jobs they could work for different Monster Hunter weapons, it's quite the good potential. For now though, it seems like the first collab event will be Street Fighter, and I just hope they do something at least a little bit more interesting with it than just a normal event quest and a layered set. But we'll see. I'm still hopeful for it being the first layered weapon in Wilds though of some kind. That'd at least be really nice. Let me know your thoughts though, and maybe your own hopes. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.